And right after losing my dad, I had gotten sick. And I went to the hospital and was treated for strep throat with Percocets and an antibiotic. And even though I had had Percocets before because I had a C-section with my first son, it was different this time. This time, it made me feel a feeling I had never felt before. And that's where my life changed forever. And it still, even today, being sober, still affects my life. From that point forward, I had to have pills every single day. If I didn't have them, I wasn't getting out of bed. I wasn't cooking, I wasn't cleaning, I wasn't leaving the house. I felt like those pills not only made me feel different and numb the things inside that I was hurting from, it made me a better mom, it made me a better wife, but in reality that wasn't the case. About 6 years ago, I was introduced to heroin. The pills had been hard to get. People had been cut off due to pill counts, not having their pills like they were supposed to. And heroin was cheaper. Someone came to my house one day and said, "Here, try this. Do this one. This is just like a Percocet, but a little bit better and cheaper." Never said it was heroin, that was the seller. It was a little cheaper. And that's where my life started spiraling out of control. I still remained functional for a time being. I also added meth, and with that, I had done cocaine previously, but I added meth in there, and life really started falling apart. I would spend the rent money behind my husband's back. My husband was an addict too. He was a meth addict. He was a little different than me. A lot different than me, actually. He still worked very hard. He worked for everything he had, but he was an addict. So I was spending Christmas money. I was spending rent money. Eventually we got evicted. I lost custody of my oldest two kids to their father. I've been married twice. Their dad took them. I was really angry about that. I felt like it was unfair because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was a good mom in my eyes. In his, he was doing the best thing he could have done for them, and that was keeping them safe. Because at this point in time, my current husband and I's relationship was very toxic and very violent. So I lost custody of them in 2015. Instead of trying to get better, I just got worse. It continued to go downhill. About 2 years ago, 3 maybe, I discovered fentanyl. And fentanyl was a different high than heroin. And that's when my life really, really went downhill. We were homeless. At this point, Danny's meth use had increased greatly. He's what I called a meth monster. He was a monster. But I was too. But he was a monster. He started serving quite a bit of time in jail. And during those times in jail, I would go into survival mode and do what I felt I needed to do. And we ended up homeless. Me and my younger 2 kids bouncing from house to house, from trap house to trap house, me thinking that I was taking care of them. This is okay. They're fine. And in reality, I didn't deserve to have them. They were exposed to things, even with Danny and I's relationship, that no child should have to endure. They saw more than what I even like to admit. Eventually, I too was arrested and went to jail. Danny was incarcerated. I got picked up on misdemeanor warrants, and there was nowhere for the younger 2 to go. Family was done with us, absolutely fed up. And it wasn't anything against the kids, but they weren't taking them because I was going to get out of jail in 15 days maybe, and go back to doing the same thing I was doing. I wasn't going to get better, and they knew that. So Children's Services took them, and they ended up in foster care. I get out of jail. Do what I should have done and try to get help and try to get my kids back. No, I ran as far away from them as I could. I avoided and ran from children's services. I did the opposite of everything I should have done. And I did that for 4 more months. I had found a new level of bottom by this time. And I was out there on my own, you know? I had no will or want to live anymore. Nothing to live for. In my eyes, I had nothing to live for. But Danny, he got out of jail. And like I said, I was on the run for 4 more months. He got out of jail, and he felt that I did have a reason to live. And he felt that he needed to work to show me that I had a reason to live. I felt like my kids were better off without me because all I did was hurt them. And he worked to show me that that wasn't the case. That and my oldest eventually did the same. So he gets out of jail and he tries to contact me, you know, but I was like, you know, I'm done with the violence. I might not have anything, but I'm done, and I'm never going to change, so he's never going to change. You know, it's going to be the same cycle, so we're just best left alone. So for about 3 weeks, he tried to get in contact with me, and I denied that contact. And he kept trying to reassure me that he wanted to change. He was done with the drugs, and he wanted a life for us together and better. And I didn't believe it. Didn't believe it. But eventually, I did talk to him, and he sent me hundreds and hundreds of messages in a week's time, trying to get me to communicate with him. And finally, I did. And he sent me a picture of my 4 kids and I. And he said, Whitney, you can have this again. You can have this again. And instead of doing, it got my brain working. He also said, let me help you. Let me help you. And that was something nobody had ever said to me. You know, family and everybody had washed their hands clean of me. But instead of doing what you would think it would do and be like, you know what, that's what I want. It did the opposite. It did the absolute opposite, and I sunk it even further down in because I felt, again, like they were better off without me. You know, it sent the opposite effect. Like I really didn't want to live then. You know, I didn't want to, and I had plans of fully ending it. And Danny didn't mean for that to happen. You know, he thought he was doing a good thing. Like, hey, this is going to register with her, and she's going to come for me. You know, she's going to let me help her. Instead, I wrote them a letter explaining, like a goodbye letter. And I had kept enough drugs back that I knew would be a fatal dose. And I was going to leave this world, you know, because everybody was better off. I could only hurt my kids one more time. You know, I wouldn't be able to hurt them again. One final time. The house was getting ready to leave, and I was going to be by myself, and that's when I was going to do this, you know, and I felt this joy and excitement that this was about to be over. The pain, the desperation, you know, I was desperate, but I didn't know how to get up out of this hole I was in. You know, the only way I knew how to do it was to leave this world. So it was about that time, and little did I know, while this was taking place, Danny, in his desperation, had gone to a pastor's house. And he spent a couple hours talking with this pastor that he knew. And right before Danny left, they prayed together. And he left and didn't make it 2 miles down the road when the house emptied for me, and it was time for me to do what I had planned on doing. But instead, when that house emptied, I grabbed that letter, and without a second thought, I tore it up. Just ripped it in two. Picked up the phone, and I called Danny and said, come get me. Before I even had a second thought, you know? That was God's doings. That was God's doings. And I didn't realize it then. You know, it took me a long time, but that was God's doings. You know, God saved my life. He really did. And he worked in ways that I couldn't see him work until way later. Just like Danny praying with that pastor and making it not 2 miles down the road. And instead of me taking that fatal dose, I ripped up that letter and I called him, come get me, and he did. God ended up using Danny to get through to me. You know, we went from being worst enemies and severely toxic to God using him to bring me to the other side, you know. For the next month, I didn't have insurance. Things were pretty tough. I couldn't go. Danny didn't have a home. You know, he had just got out of jail. He was trying to get on his feet. He was living with his mom. I couldn't go to his mom's because I had robbed her when Danny went to jail for the last time, October 7th, 2019. And that's his clean date. So we were only left to go to another trap house and stay until I could get the help I needed. So here's Danny sober and remained sober until we could get me into treatment. So on February 19th, 2020, I got high for the last time, for the final time. And I walked in to a detox facility, actually right here in Perry County. That's where my journey in recovery started. This county saved my life, along with God and my willingness. I went into the detox facility. I spent 8 days in there. And day 3 of being clean and my mind starting to come back to normal, I didn't know how I was going to live. I didn't know how I was going to live without drugs. You know, I was clean, and that's what I wanted to be. You know, I'd reached the point of desperation, and I had, you know, and yeah, some people might say, well, he's your husband. You know, he should do that for you. Nope. The situation I was living in, he got out of jail. He was sober. He could have went on with his life. And he didn't. You know, so I was sitting there and I had no clue what I was going to do. You know, filled with anxiety, filled with fear, filled with, you know, all these questions running through my mind. How am I going to do this? I can't imagine life without drugs. Can't imagine it. You know, that's the only thing I've known for most of my adult life. And at that point in time, mind you, I don't want to say I hated God, but I kind of did. I resented him greatly. So I was very far from God. God wasn't a part of my life and had not been a part of my life. But that day, that night, I dropped to my knees and literally cried out to the sky and said, God, if you are real, if you hear me, I don't even know if I'm doing this right, please take this from me. Take it from me. I don't want it anymore. I'm done. I'm absolutely done. And I cried myself to sleep that night. And when I woke up the next morning, I had a sense of peace over me that I can't even explain. Like, I can't explain it. But it was gone. That fear was gone. That question was gone. That doubt was gone. And I felt like a new person. I felt like I had been born again. You know, like my wings, I could spread them. And I went on up to Stanton Villa, and I was feeling so confident that, and I wouldn't advise absolutely anybody to do this at all. Stanton Villa is a 42-day program. I spent 15 days there. I didn't say, and that's not a good choice to make. But I'm not going to say God healed me, because I'll never become that comfortable in my recovery. But he took it from me, and I was confident of that. Danny would follow what we called the druggie buggy. He would follow it around. He figured out the schedule, and he'd come to the AA meetings. And this one night he come, and I said, I'm coming with you. Come on. He's like, oh, no, you're not. He was comfortable with me being where I was at. And I did. I left. And I left there, and I left my hometown, and I left everyone that I knew. Everybody. I had to. You know, it's so important to change people and places and things, and I realized how important that is. And I did. I moved 2 hours away from my hometown, and I did do 12-step programs in the beginning. I don't today. My recovery and my program is my family and God. That's my program today. And I've been there ever since. You know, I'm happy where I'm at. It's a different world there, you know. I don't have the stuff in my face all the time, and you know, so many people they get out and they don't change those things that need to be changed, and it's really easy to fall back in to the old habits. If you can get out, get out. Most definitely get out. Today I am able to help other people. I go into a county jail and I work with women on addiction, a reentry program. I'm trusted to do that. You know, I'm trusted to do things. I'm trusted. People trust me with their life, you know, to where I couldn't even be trusted with change sitting around for a long time. You know, people trust me with their life. They trust my word. You know, they take what I say serious. And I can't change people's lives. They have to change their own, but I hopefully give them hope and inspiration and show them that it is possible, you know, that you can do it. You can do it, you know, and I lean on God 100%. He's brought me to where I'm at today. Fully has brought me to where I'm at today. And I want to share something with you guys. I do readings every day, and this happened to pop up in my reading last night. It says, don't ever scorn someone because they are different from you, or ignore them when they suffer. God calls them valuable, so valuable that his son gave his life for them. Human life is sacred, and we must never lose sight of that fact. And I thought that was pretty fitting, you know. We are humans. We are, you know, we're just like everybody else, but we're sick. You know, we're sick, but we can get better. We can get better. I mean, I'm living proof of that right now. And I want to thank you guys for having me here today. Last time I did a really long speech, so I'm going to cut it up today. But I thank you, and we do recover.